Well, we are excited today to have Brittany from Sherwin Williams hosting this meetup for us. Really timely topic since we have our spring career and internship fair next Thursday on campus, and Sherwin Williams will be there. So definitely be sure to stop by their table at the fair next week. But Brittany's going to be talking about your resume and also kind of how you develop that elevator pitch. If you have any questions during the session, feel free to come off mute or put them in the chat. And I will let Brittany know if anything comes in the chat. But I will just turn it over to Brittany. Thanks again, Brittany.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. So, very timely topic. I love speaking on this one. I think it's super beneficial, especially as you're preparing for the fair, especially in springtime when internships, you're potentially prepping for graduation. So just making sure this is a topic that's um, pretty widely used and also pretty important. So really want to jump into it because I know I have quite a bit of stuff to go over and not a crazy amount of time. So want to jump right in. So I'll do a quick intro on myself, just so that you can put a face to a name, learn a little bit more about myself. Then we'll jump right into resume and elevator pitch. So resume tips, what is an elevator pitch? And then just some advice from myself. And then who is Sherwin Williams? Cultural trends and opportunities. So just a little bit about Sherwin. To wrap it up, why not? I have you guys on the call. I'll have an opportunity to pitch us a little bit, but you guys also have time to see us at the fair next week too. So a little bit about myself. So I'm Brittany Martinez. I am a specialist talent acquisition within Sherwin Williams. I have been with the company a little over 5.5 years. I did actually start off with Sherwin in San Diego, California. I'm now based out in Charleston, but cover the Carolinas and Savannah. So I have quite a large territory that I do cover. But I did start off in one of our programs called our Management and Sales Training Program, MTP, as you see on the screen. I'll touch on that towards the end briefly. And then was an assistant store manager before I shifted into the HR field in early talent in the Southwest Division out in San Diego, covering all of California as well as Nevada and Arizona. And then most recently, the last year and a half, I've been, again, as I mentioned, in the Carolinas and Savannah, Georgia, covering the same position, just different territory, different schools. Even though I was out west for a while, I did graduate from UNC Wilmington, and I did play the D1 soccer as well as semi-pro. So my life was academics and work as well as school. So definitely miss it. I love getting back on campus and speaking to students. So we'll just jump right in to kind of go into resume tips. Tips and tricks, especially as we're prepping for the fair, making sure that everything's fine-tuned, you have a resume, and it's all ready to go prior to the fair. Because I will say this is probably one of the largest fairs I've gone to. There's a lot of employers, a lot of opportunities, great way to practice, network, and definitely having a resume is going to be needed. So to kick it off, what is a resume? The purpose of a resume. So a resume is an accurate description of qualifications in an easy to read format. So it's not going to be a long written research paper of every detail of your experience. It is going to be easy to read and just a description of your qualifications. And it's going to be demonstrate relevant qualifications as well. Because I know a lot of us have, as you start working and having more experience, your resume just starts building and building, but it has to be applicable to what you are applying for and or looking to do. So a resume is not, again, your autobiography. I don't need to know your whole life story. It is there to, again, get you a job. It's not to get you a job. It's supposed to land you an interview. So it's document to list all your accomplishments and again, an overview of your qualifications. So utilizing your resume as an opportunity to showcase who you are, skill sets that you have in a professional manner, enough to spark a recruiter or a hiring manager's interest to want to have a conversation about a position you've either have applied to and or that you're interviewing for. So Formatting, I think is super important. Have quite a few points I want to hit on the formatting aspect of it. So margin should be no smaller than 0.5. Using 10 to 12 point font, we don't need anything super fancy. As you can see, there's a lot of creative fonts that you could use, and those are all fine and dandy. They look great, but not necessarily on a resume. A lot of times you want to keep it probably to what you're using on your what am I going to say? Research papers and projects and presentations and stuff like that. So, making it easy to read, Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri, as well as remembering save your cover letter or resume in a docx, or PDF. Love PDF. I think that's probably the best way to save it. As well as other formats may not be compatible with all devices and or uploading for a variety of different application methods. So save your document with the appropriate title as well. I can't tell you, I've seen some pretty creative resumes that have been saved. Interestingly, not that it's going to deter me, but it's not something that, again, when I'm passing it along throughout the interview process to the hiring managers, a lot of times I do the due diligence and rename it, but professionally, I'd recommend first name, last name, and then just write the word resume. You could put like the year or two. I know some people do like 2025, but we don't need to see like resume 2, resume 5, because I know a lot of times resumes can be specific to a variety of different positions or industries you're applying to, and you may have a few different ones, and that's how you're labeling them. But when you're uploading them, keep it first name, last name, resume. Try not to use a template like pictures, getting all fancy. There's no need for that. We see the information. I look over it for the qualifications, and then that's really kind of it. And I utilize that as talking points throughout my conversation with you. So making sure that is something that if it's you know not anything crazy distracting. No longer than one page is recommended. I know, again, some people might have a ton of experience, especially as I've gone into my career. I've held quite a few jobs. So I would then utilize the most relevant aspect of my positions, what's most applicable. And then the ones that are, anywhere from like 2 to 5 years, again, depending on how much experience you have dropped off my resume at this point. So, with that being said, you want to list experience as well as work history in reverse chronological order. So most recent first. You don't want to put your last recent hire. I've been seeing that more often than not, which I thought is kind of interesting. I feel like most people would mainly think to put their resume from most relevant to their last profession or whatever's listed at the bottom. But you want to make sure that your most recent's at the top, because that's going to be the most important. That's where the eyes are going to go to. Because I also thought it was kind of a joke until I've gotten into this position when, I'm looking at resumes all day, every day, interviewing on top of balancing a lot of different other things. I don't spend like even longer than a minute. That's probably too long looking at a resume initially. I have a few bullet points I look for on resumes to make sure that you hit the qualifications my hiring managers are looking for outside of the mandated qualifications when you originally apply. But other than that, I really don't go into all the nitty-gritty on what's in there. So you want to make sure, especially the top is what you're highlighting is most important and it's attractive with your experience as well as how it's formatted. So the header. So again, header, it's name, bold, and large font. That's going to be the one that you want to be highlighted the most. Address, do not list this. Just put city and zip. We don't need to know your full street address. Again, that's personal information. If you do have that on there, I'd recommend taking it off. That's for no one's business. That's if when you apply, you're going to put that on an application, but that's not for a resume you're just handing out to everybody. Again, just city and zip to keep it general. Phone number, obviously an easy way for us to contact you. Make sure also it is the most updated phone number as well as accurate. I know there's sometimes where there's typos, so double check, make sure it's the correct phone number and it's the most accurate phone number. Email. While you guys are in school, it's totally fine to use your school email. I see a lot of people that do that, but also put the email you're going to check the most. Don't put your school email if you never really check your school email, especially on resumes, because if you have employers emailing you, sending you links to schedule, interviews and stuff like that, you're going to forget. And, a lot of times we're not going to wait 2 or 3 weeks for a response. We're going to wait a few days, maybe a week. So make sure it's a relevant email as well as one that you check often. Optional, LinkedIn's always great to have on there if you do have one. Digital portfolio. I know sometimes some majors and some experiences do require to have that listed. So that's a good link to have there as well. And an objective statement wouldn't necessarily be completely in the header, but right underneath it. That's kind of up to your discretion. I personally don't really read them um, unless they're very well worded. It's usually anywhere from 2 to 3 sentences, really just highlighting your interest into the position and kind of just utilizing it to sell yourself. But I'd rather save that space unless you need to fill space on that one page to see your experience and what you've done in each position versus just a blanket statement that's pretty general. And again, this information allows employers to make contact with you, so it is super important to have documented correctly, accurately, and visually appealing. So an example, contact information here, as well as education. So contact, you saw on the previous slide too. Again, it's pretty simple, city, state, zip, your name, address, or your name, your phone number, your email, and then obviously if you wanted to tag on your LinkedIn, a lot of times I see people like right behind your email, we'll do that. We'll do that line again, and then we'll tack on their LinkedIn profile. Education's a good one I want to point out as well, just for formatting. So when it comes to education, you want to list it, your expected graduation date. So unless you've already graduated. And unique example, so I actually transferred halfway through my college experience. So I did actually have 2 universities on there just because it didn't make sense with when I started at my second university and when I graduated. I know a lot of people will do that when it comes to if you were like going to a community college for the first half and then you transferred into a university. So that's, more than welcome to add that underneath that. But your most relevant experience, which is going to be the school you're attending, is what you're going to want to have there. Again, expected graduation, December 2021, the name of your university, location, the degree that you are going to be majoring in, and then if you want to list any accolades and or GPA, again, sometimes you need to put it on your resume. Sometimes you don't. I did include my resume. I did include my GPA. I do remember when I first graduated, probably for like the first year. After that, it's really not applicable unless you are applying for a certain position that required a certain GPA. But again, I still do have on my resume listed. I was a student athlete. What I graduated, so like magna cum laude. I think those are definitely very key highlights and things you want to list underneath your education it shows, and some of those are more post-grad once you graduate. So those may tack on once you graduate. Experience, so kind of the bulk of your resume. So definitely want to include name of company, position title, length, so month, year, so like example, January 2016 to August 2018, and or like if you're currently working there, you would do when you started. So say January 2016 to present. And so you would also list the city and state, so similar to the education portion, but city and state, as well as maybe three bullet points. I'd say 3 to 5. Again, it really depends on how much experience, how much space you have that you need to fill. Don't just fill it with just some random bullet points that make no sense or that are pretty universal to each position. Make it specific to the job duties, tasks, or transferable skills and or accomplishments. Making it, numerical is great, quantifying quantifying your accomplishments and what you did is always a great thing. An experience consists of full-time, part-time jobs, internships, practicums, field and cooperative education, volunteer experience, job shadowing, study abroad, or athletics. I will say I didn't have a ton of experience when I was building my resume throughout college because, as I mentioned, I played soccer. That was my life. I worked over the summer. I had some part-time jobs. So I utilized some of my volunteering experience to put on there because I was pretty bare on my experience until I got more towards my senior year. So I put my experience, or I put my volunteering experience like with class projects when I had to, like, for example, I was a hospitality management major. We had a class where we had to put on an entire event and partner with a community organization and fundraise. So to me, that kind of seemed pretty applicable to experience to what I thought I was going to do. I utilized that as an experience bullet point because I didn't have too many. But then again, you could also list that, underneath volunteering, community service could be an option as well underneath experience. So it can vary, but again, a lot of times we want to see that full-time, part-time internship, and or even study abroad too. In athletics, you want to definitely want to pinpoint those out. So statement writing. So again, start each line with an action verb. Have some listed to your to the left. Present tense if you're currently employed. Past tense if you're no longer employed. So vary your choice of action verbs as well. I don't want to see the same one over and over and over again. There are quite a few. Google can be your best friend with a variety of them. I said this is 20. There's a ton more. Utilize that to your benefit to get that to vary that and then make that a little bit more appealing to the eye with what you're saying. Tailor your skills and experience to the position. I did mention that briefly. So when that comes to, when I mentioned when you're saving your resumes, people may have, 5 different resumes when they graduate because, you have one maybe for sales, you have one for marketing, you have one for management. Some of those can be combined and you could probably have a universal one, but it's nice to have a few, especially if you're open and you don't necessarily know where you're going and you can kind of have a resume that fits a multitude of different job industries and career choices. Same with internships as well. But that's again where it goes to making sure you save it appropriately, as well as it's tailored. Use the job descriptions. They're a cheat sheet. They are literally telling you everything that the employer is looking for. I will say, I think I've even always been told that prior to when I was looking for my first career, you can always apply, even if you're underqualified. With the ATS systems these days and just how we're vetting candidates, I will say not preferred, required qualifications. A lot of times, those are the ones, if you don't have those, and if there's questions asked throughout your application, not saying don't go and lie because it probably will be figured out throughout the interview process based off your experience. But if you don't have those required qualifications, that is something to take into consideration. Maybe start when you're in college, looking at job descriptions of positions you're looking for and seeing what they're looking for in a candidate and seeing how your resume and your experience tailors to that, maybe what you need to gain, especially if you have some time. But utilize those job descriptions as, a cheat sheet. Preferred qualifications are preferred. That may be an opportunity where, you know, you may stand out over one candidate over another, but the required ones are a lot of times you want to focus to make sure you have those and or the ones that they're asking when you're applying, that those are a yes, because sometimes unfortunately, so with I may not even see your application come through if you didn't hit the required one. So just a little tad bit of advice and just a little secret from recruiters. I'm sure most of us go through that, but just use the job description. Focus on your achievements versus tasks. As I mentioned, that's the kind of the quantifying your accomplishments and making sure I am seeing what you did, how many, how long it took you, how many people you helped, and not just saying this is something I did, but this is something I accomplished or something I started and or led. Be concise while providing enough detail, as well as transferable skills are abilities or knowledge that you develop in one job or experience that can be transferred to another job. So that, as I mentioned, transferable skills is probably I've said this, what, 5 or 6 times now. Those are the things we're looking for in your statement writing and your experiences that are going to make you stand out on paper to, again, land you an interview, not necessarily the job, because you will have to obviously sell yourself through, which will be kind of that elevator part we'll talk about in a second. I do want to kind of just do a quick reminder, social media, especially when you're networking, going to fairs and or applying for internships and jobs. I don't know how every employer handles this, if they do audit them, if they do look at them, is it a factor? I have heard a lot of times it does factor into a lot of people potentially losing their jobs, what they're posting, not, paying attention to guidelines, what could be, how they're portraying themselves online is an exact representation of the company they're working for. It's a lot of kind of what people are correlating that with. So just be cautious of how you portray yourself. Especially more on the professional side of things, especially when it comes to like LinkedIn, Indeed, probably more like that LinkedIn, just because LinkedIn's professional. I wouldn't say it's not a place for you to post personal things here or there, but you also have a lot of different avenues: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. That's personal. LinkedIn's professional. Keep it that way, but also take an audit when you're applying for internships, when you're applying for jobs, making sure it's, showcasing who you are. It's a brand that you want to stand behind, just in case it is part of the vetting process when it comes to maybe considering you for the position. So again, you want to keep it professional, and showcasing good characteristics of yourself. So social media is everywhere. It's not going anywhere. If anything, it's only growing and getting bigger, but just kind of take that into consideration. It can be a factor, could be a deterrent, but it also could help you as well. So marketing your brand. So again, having your resume is kind of the first thing. If not, getting that started. Use your career services. I mean, you have the opportunity to go in. There's tons of blanket kind of examples that you can kind of formulate, and kind of get your resume started off of. But then also you have advisors and people there to review them, help you. Employers are there. If every other week or every few weeks, like drop in, get some good actual feedback on it, and continuously working. Like it's an ever-changing, ever-evolving document. So I also always recommend like having like a master copy of your resume that has absolutely every experience and or anything you've ever done written on it. And it could have like 20 bullet points. Who cares? It's the master copy, but it's what you're going to pull to either have your multiple ones that are geared towards certain industries and or as you're evolving with your experiences, making sure that you can pull from that and you don't forget. Because to me, I know what I did 5 years ago. Do I know the actual nitty-gritty details of everything I did in my positions? No, because I've done so much more since then. So, but I've had that over the years with me that if I need to pull from it, I have that. Getting involved in gaining experience, not saying that just going to school is great, but getting involved, being on campus, clubs, organizations, intramurals, sports, community service, class projects, involvement, obviously working and balancing school is something, especially when it comes to management roles, sales roles, is going to be very, kind of very attractive to employers when we're looking at your resume, that you were able to balance multitask, work on a team, as well as having your LinkedIn profile. You can kind of use your resume, to kind of use that as a baseline to kind of build your LinkedIn. I always say I actually didn't really start using my LinkedIn until I actually started in this position, ironically. 3 years ago, I had one. I used it, but I really didn't prioritize like the formatting it, what was on there specifically. Obviously, being a recruiter now, it's super important. And I utilize it very often when it comes to candidate connection networking. So it is something that's very important. So making sure you have that up and running, especially before graduation, if anything else. So building your network early, going to the career fair, is a great start when you have employers coming on campus, utilizing them to go speak to them, practice, learn, and kind of get their experience, and then developing your elevator speech. Not sure why it cut off. Usually it's right behind there, but elevator speech is what it says, and which is what we're going to talk on next. So not too much to speak on this because it's pretty straightforward and it's personal, as well, because it's going to be different for each person. But an elevator pitch As again, tell me about yourself. It's kind of like the most common first question that you're going to get asked, but it's an opportunity for you to explain and respond to that question and or introduce yourself, not even responding to a question like that. So can be used at career fairs, interviews, networking events. It's a 1 to 2 minute introduction of who you are. Again, gauging the time, maybe 2 minutes might be a little longer, but dependent on like at a career fair, 2 minutes might be totally fine because, again, it's more of a networking and talking an opportunity. But maybe when you're in an interview, it's closer to that like 45 seconds to a minute time frame because you don't want to spend a ton of time on this question here, you want to get into the nitty-gritty of your experiences. Again, it's not your entire life story. Education, relevant, recent job experiences, your involvement. Share how you are qualified, share why you're interested in this opportunity, as always a great reason, and demonstrating enthusiasm for the company specifically, as well as the opportunity that they have. So when it comes to preparation, start thinking kind of self-reflect. Like, what are your strengths? What are your career goals? Like, where do you see yourself? I'm sure everyone dreads that question, where you see yourself in 5 years. But really think, I actually went and spoke in front of a class a few days ago on campus, on another campus, and we were asking them about, what they're majoring in, when are they graduating, and what do they see themselves doing. And almost actually all of them said, I don't know, in regards to what they see themselves doing after. And a lot of them were rising seniors. They're going to be graduating next May. So again, that's totally perfectly fine. There's still plenty of time. But use the time on campus, the experiences you have, your professors, these networking opportunities to start thinking about maybe career goals. What do you like? What do you like that your major might offer, may help you gain certain experiences? What do you like in the classes that you're learning about that are probably career specific to what you're going to be potentially doing? Just start thinking about that now because you don't want to catch yourself right before graduation being like, I genuinely don't know what I want to do. You want to have hopefully some sort of a direction. Interests, what interests you, what makes you unique. Again, everyone's different, and figuring out a way how to kind of sell yourself and make yourself stand out. And then what's your end goal? I like to ask that when I interview for our training program, like, what do you want to get? What do you want to get out of this? Like, do you want to grow? Is this just a job for you? And a lot of times me asking that question helps me pick out those who are just genuinely looking for a job versus genuinely looking for a career or wanting to grow with us. Because when you're hiring on more post-grad, looking for an opportunity, we don't want to just hire someone just to hire them because they just want a job. We want to see that you're interested in the company, you want to grow. If that's true or not, things always change, but we want to see your interest in staying, and our investment in you is going to be returned as well. So I have this next slide, and this is going to kind of be the last slide before I get into Sherwin and everything like that. But this is kind of, again, a blanket statement. Again, very generic. So play around with it, but it's a great foundation to kind of start building that, you know, that first elevator pitch you may have, and you can kind of play around with it. It's like, hi, my name is Brittany. I'm majoring in blank with, minoring in blank. I'm graduating May of 26 from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. I'm graduating, or I'm greatly interested in beginning my career or gaining experience through internship and or a career with the company that you're applying to. I'm excited to put my previous experience in XYZ to use and grow with an organization that values. What do you value? What's important to you? Does it align with what the company values? Could you please tell me more about your company and what opportunities you may have that align with my goals? So you want to take a picture of this, screenshot it. I think it's a great blanket, again, generic blanket statement. You can play around with it, add, get more specific, more unique to who you are and what you have to offer. But a great, great starting point. And to end off here, because I know we're quickly approaching the end of time, but wanted to just give some advice that I stand true. I like to always end off with these things. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just be sure to learn from them. I'm sure we all have had situations in college where, maybe a test goes bad, project doesn't go the way you're doing, something happens at work, you have a bad day, something happens. It all happens to us, but just learn from it. Don't shy away. Don't make that, you know, be your whole identity. Just make sure, again, mistakes happen, learn from them. Make sure you know your why. So going back to about who you are, what you value, where you want to go, why you want to go where you go, because you own your own destiny. We're going to help you get there. Hopefully you have good recruiters, obviously you have good advisors, you have great mentors, hopefully throughout your time on campus and or just in general with family, friends, jobs, experiences, but you own your own destiny. So taking that into consideration, that you own that. Be patient. Things don't always happen overnight. They don't happen in a year. They don't happen in 2 years sometimes, but just be patient. And then I like to mention with that, a lot of us have, I like to say, blinders when I speak to a lot of students on campus that, I'm majoring in marketing. So I have to go into marketing when I graduate, or I have to do a marketing internship, or sales. I have to go into sales, or I have to go into management. However, that is, there's a lot of specific majors too. Like I thought I had to go into hospitality was my focus. So I had to do sales, when it comes to, working in hotels. But again, I'm not working in hotels. I am still working in sales. So my skill set that I learned throughout university, as well as my major, my experiences I had was in guest services and hospitality, but now I'm in I was in management in the retail side of things, and now I'm in HR. Which is, not necessarily the same thing, but, it's still business, but it is different. So take the blinders off, utilize, the opportunities that you do have, transferable skills going back to that. Hopefully everything can kind of lead up to opportunities. You never know what doors can open from the opportunities that you do take that may not be what you think you're needing or would, take you in the direction that you're wanting to go. It could lead you to a better opportunity or navigate you to a new career path too. Be open to change, trust yourself, embrace every challenge that you have. Don't limit your job search. Don't limit your job search. Be open. Interview, network, talk to different employers, and also do what you say you're going to do. Follow through. Be that candidate, that if you schedule an interview, you show up, you don't ghost the recruiter. If you're going to, what you're saying you're going to do on your resume, don't oversell yourself, because when you get to your position, whether it be an internship, a job, or post grad, you don't want to catch yourself in a situation where you're like, oh, wow, I probably should not have said that I know how to do that because I don't. Now, maybe you can learn it, but you don't want to oversell yourself with false experiences. So do what you say you're going to do, follow through. So just some advice for myself that I've seen over the years that I'd like to give. I'm going to pause here as I go to this next slide. Any questions on anything that I have gone over? Um, I'm looking off to the side because that's where my Zoom